December 1944. Across the scarred fields of Europe, the thunder of engines rolled like distant storms. Snow mixed with the black smoke of battle as the Sherman tanks of the U.S. Army rumbled across France and Belgium. To the enemy, they seemed endless, lines of steel crawling over the horizon, relentless and alive. But the true power of the Sherman was not its armor or its gun. It was its voice. Inside every tank, beneath the whine of the engine and the vibration of treads, men spoke through static and code, an invisible thread that stitched entire divisions together. The Germans had their Tigers, the fearsome kings of the battlefield, with guns that could pierce a Sherman from a mile away. But the Americans had something the Germans could never match: radios in every tank, a chorus of coordination that turned chaos into calculation, panic into precision. The story of how America's tanks triumphed through communication begins not on the battlefield, but in the minds of engineers and strategists who understood that modern war would be won not just by firepower, but by information. When the United States entered World War II, its armored doctrine was still young. The Germans had already demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of blitzkrieg, lightning war powered by coordination between tanks, infantry, and aircraft. The Americans studied these lessons well. They built the M4 Sherman not as a monster of steel, but as a reliable, fast, and easily repairable machine that could be produced by the tens of thousands. Yet the true genius of the Sherman lay within its walls. A two-way radio, simple to operate, rugged in design, and powerful enough to reach command networks miles away. It was not just a tool, it was a revolution. In every Sherman, a commander could speak instantly to his platoon, coordinate with infantry, and receive live orders from headquarters. What this meant was speed. Speed not just of movement, but of thought. When German tank crews spotted an enemy, they relied on signal flags or runners to communicate. Precious minutes lost as the battlefield shifted. But the Americans, they turned seconds into survival. A Sherman under fire could call for artillery, request an airstrike, or warn its brothers of an ambush, all before the enemy could react. For the first time in history, an armored force behaved like a single organism, thousands of machines thinking and moving as one. In Normandy, the impact was immediate. As Allied forces broke out from the beaches, the Germans expected confusion, bottlenecks, and chaos. Instead, they met orchestration. Sherman crews maneuvered with uncanny coordination. Tank commanders spoke calmly over the radio as shells whistled overhead. Panzer, 2 o'clock, range 400, fire. A few miles away, another crew heard the transmission and adjusted its position to flank. Infantry units, wired into the same network, moved with them, advancing through hedgerows under precise cover fire. Every Sherman that moved forward carried not just men, but information, the most valuable ammunition of all. German officers were astonished. Reports flooded headquarters describing how American tanks seemed to appear in multiple directions at once, how artillery responded within moments, how retreats were cut off before they began. They called it ghost coordination, the eerie efficiency of an enemy that seemed to know everything. What they did not understand was that the Americans had built a war of voices, a battle fought through the airwaves. The Sherman's radios, SCR 508 and later SCR 528, were the beating hearts of this system, transmitting orders with clarity even under bombardment. And where the Germans had perhaps one radio per company, the Americans had one per vehicle. That single difference rewrote the rules of mechanized warfare. The life of a Sherman crew revolved around that constant hum of radio chatter. Inside the cramped steel belly of the tank, with its engine roaring like a furnace, the intercom became their lifeline. Every word mattered. Load a P meant armor piercing. Button up meant brace for fire. Traverse left could be the difference between life and death. Outside in the frozen forests of the Ardennes, a commander's voice crackled through static. All units, shift south. German armor sighted near Houffalize within minutes. Entire platoons of tanks repositioned, catching the advancing panzers by surprise. Without that speed of communication, the Battle of the Bulge might have been far bloodier. The Germans, despite their superior tanks, struggled with coordination. The Tiger and Panther crews were elite, their optics unmatched, their guns deadly. But they were blind beyond their immediate line of sight. Their radios were few and often unreliable, their frequencies disorganized, their encryption poor. Orders traveled slowly through layers of command, And when confusion set in, it turned deadly. Many German tankers recalled being trapped in ambushes where American Shermans attacked from three sides, their positions updated through a flurry of radio messages. The Shermans were not stronger, they were smarter. Their unity was invisible, their strength intangible. By late 1944, this advantage had become decisive. In France and Belgium, as towns fell one by one, the Shermans' radio networks extended like veins across the battlefield. Engineers established mobile relay stations, trucks packed with antennas and spare parts, ensuring communication never failed. Pilots overhead tuned into tank frequencies, coordinating bombing runs with ground units in real time. The result was devastating. German armor could no longer surprise. Every movement was tracked, every thrust anticipated. Patton's Third Army, moving with terrifying speed, depended on these radios as much as on fuel. His motto was simple: attack and attack again, but stay in touch. For the men inside the tanks, the radio was more than a tactical tool. It was a voice of hope in the fog of war. They could hear not just orders, but reassurance, laughter, even prayer. One veteran remembered, "You were never alone." Even when the shells hit close, someone's voice would come through, "Hang on, we're with you." That was everything. These invisible connections forged brotherhood stronger than steel. In the chaos of battle, when visibility was zero and death was seconds away, that crackle of a friendly voice could steady shaking hands. Technically, the Shermans were at a disadvantage. Their 75mm gun could not easily penetrate the frontal armor of a Tiger. Their thin plating made them vulnerable. But where the Tiger was a solitary predator, the Sherman was a pack animal. 5 Shermans could outmaneuver, outcommunicate, and ultimately outfight a single Tiger through coordination alone. American doctrine embraced this reality. Rather than seeking duels, Sherman units attacked in teams, flanking, distracting, and overwhelming their enemy. The radio made it possible. One tank drew fire, another circled behind, a third called artillery support. Within moments, the supposedly superior Tiger was engulfed, outnumbered, and destroyed. Historians later called it networked warfare. Decades before computers or satellites, American tankers built a living web of information. Every voice became a data point, every transmission a thread in a vast, invisible net. This adaptability gave the U.S. Army a psychological edge as well. While German units awaited new orders from distant headquarters, American platoons solved problems on the spot. The battlefield became a chessboard of sound, where speed of communication equaled speed of victory. Even Eisenhower acknowledged that radio coordination had become the nervous system of the Allied war machine. During the liberation of France, this invisible weapon reached its peak. Convoys of Shermans rolled through destroyed villages, their radios buzzing with code names and map coordinates. Resistance fighters transmitted intelligence to passing tanks. Air reconnaissance relayed updates to ground forces within minutes. It was total synchronization. The German army, still recovering from air raids and fuel shortages, found itself fighting an enemy that could adapt faster than it could reload. A single radio call could summon fighter bombers to annihilate a column of retreating armor. Entire divisions dissolved under the weight of real-time coordination. But the radios were not invincible. Static, interference, and enemy jamming created chaos at times. The Battle of the Bulge tested the system like never before. As German forces surged through the Ardennes, many American units found themselves isolated. Snow and terrain disrupted signals. Some crews, cut off from command, relied on instinct and courage alone. Yet even then, the foundation of communication held. When skies cleared, the radios came alive again, reuniting shattered divisions and restoring order. This resilience proved that communication was not just a tool, it was the spirit of the army itself. Behind the front lines, young mechanics worked day and night to maintain the radios. They were unsung heroes. Technicians crouched in frozen mud, soldering wires, calibrating frequencies, ensuring that every tank's voice remained strong. Without them, the orchestra would fall silent. The enemy could destroy a bridge or a fuel line, but not the will to connect. The U.S. Army's Signal Corps became as vital as its artillery. They understood that every message sent, every call received, was a heartbeat in the body of war. As the Allied forces pushed into Germany, the power of communication only grew. Tank commanders coordinated urban warfare with infantry, using radio spotters to mark sniper nests and strongholds. In the ruins of Cologne and Aachen, Sherman crews directed fire through radio-linked observers. The precision was astonishing. Buildings reduced, block by block, with surgical accuracy. Civilians hiding in basements described hearing the eerie rhythm of the battle, the distant rumble of tanks, followed by short bursts of static, then the boom of synchronized fire. The war had become an orchestra of steel and sound. By April 1945, as the Reich collapsed, even German officers admitted defeat had been sealed not just by weapons, but by communication. Allied radio superiority allowed them to anticipate every move, redirect supplies, and strike with uncanny timing. The Wehrmacht's once feared efficiency crumbled in the face of a decentralized enemy that could think and move faster. The Americans had turned the tide not by brute force, but by connectivity. The Sherman, once dismissed as inferior, had proven itself the ultimate expression of industrial and organizational genius. After the war, as veterans returned home, many spoke not of heroics or glory, but of the sound, the constant hum of radio static that had guided them through fear and darkness. Some kept their old headsets as souvenirs, reminders of the unseen bond that had saved their lives. Military theorists studying the conflict recognized that the Shermans had pioneered a new kind of warfare, one where communication was as lethal as firepower. It laid the foundation for everything that followed, from Vietnam to the digital age. In the end, the legacy of the Sherman tank was not its armor or its gun, but its voice. It proved that the greatest weapon in modern war is not the shell, but the signal. The men who fought inside those steel coffins carried not only ammunition and courage, but connection, the ability to hear, to respond, to adapt. Against the roar of cannons and the scream of bombs, their voices rose through the static, clear and steady. Sherman 1 to Sherman 2, we see you. Move up, we're with you. And in that simple transmission across the frozen fields and burning towns of Europe, the Allies found their victory, not in the noise of war, but in the sound of unity.